In D&D, elementals are creatures made up of a pure form of energy, such as water or fire. Or are they? Legally, in order for a creature to be considered an elemental, they just need to be from one of the elemental planes. That's why you can have a creature who looks like this and one who looks like this, who are both considered elementals. So what does that mean? Can I go to the elemental plane of air with my loving wife, have a child there, and now through some weird interplanar birthright citizenship, our beautiful baby boy is an elemental? The dungeon master might decide, since the child was born there, the creature our air elemental obstetrician hands me is not a human baby, but a bouncing baby air genasi, ruling that the energy of the plane has impacted our newborn in some meaningful way, and they'd be right to do so. But what about the reverse? If my baby boy grows up, becomes a man made of air, and finds love with the nice Jin girl he went to high school with, and the two of them decide to get a condo on the material plane because the cost of rent in the Citadel of Ice and Steel has gotten ridiculous, so if they wanted to be able to afford a down payment and a mortgage with any reasonable amount of retirement savings set aside, they either have to find a more affordable place to live, or just languish in the drafty 3-bedroom they're sharing with 5 other people attached to the Sultan's palace, and they have a child together. What happens? Well, they'd probably be born in air genasi as well, given they are being born to 2 elemental parents, right? But wait, if my son, who I am so proud of, was born a genasi, why wouldn't my grandson be some kind of creature native to the material plane? And more importantly, if he is born looking exactly like a genasi with the same traits, great hair, and everything you would expect, is he an elemental, or is he native to the material plane, and therefore normal? I don't know, we don't really have a specific word for that, which is kind of weird, right? Anyways, if you are of the mind that my son wouldn't have been born a genasi in the first place just because my loving wife and I brought him into the world on the elemental plane of air, as someone who is decidedly just a normal human, would he then be considered an elemental purely by virtue of the physical location in which he was born? Could I use the gate spell, which specifies the target can't be native to the material plane, to summon him? I genuinely don't know. But it's kind of fun to think about, and ultimately a lot of this comes down to what the DM might rule in the moment. But the point is that while I may have thought I knew what an elemental was, I have no an idea. But I've got theories, and we're gonna circle back on that, but the specific creature I want to talk about today literally made me question everything I assumed I knew about elementals in the first place. When you picture an earth elemental, what image pops into your head? A wall of churning rock and stone? Maybe something vaguely humanoid? I know at least one of you is thinking about Thing from the Fantastic Four, but doesn't that feel a little narrow? In August of 2004, for D&D 3.5, Wizards of the Coast released a book called Races of Stone. It's a wild D&D supplement by today's standards. This book is 192 pages long and contains a detailed breakdown and information about species who are connected to stone, mountains, and earth. Now you'd probably think a book like this would be filled with new race options, spells, magic items, etc. But the first 84 pages, nearly half the book, is dedicated entirely to just talking about dwarves, gnomes, and Goliath. They do not make books like this anymore. I mean, for each species, there is an in-depth description, a psychological profile, discussion about their culture's art, rituals, deities, rites for those deities, specific city and settlement examples, plot hooks, history, myths, legends, an entire language with its own consistent grammar and common use phrases. The idea of dedicating half a book to something so needlessly in-depth is unthinkable by current precedent, and while I don't think this is at all necessary, it is pretty dang cool. The book also contains some more truncated species entries, some new prestige classes, which for those of you who weren't in the trenches of D&D 3rd edition are basically new subclasses, and of course, a handful of new feats, skills, culturally unique equipment and weapons, mounts, spells, and adventure hooks. Basically all the kind of stuff you'd expect to see in a book about some player race options. Oh, and the last 5 pages of the book, just before the appendices, yeah, let's include 6 new monsters for some reason. This is why I love doing what I do, because I was aware of this book for over 15 years. I based the entirety of my Goliath kingdoms off a bunch of the lore in this book back in the day when I was a baby DM, and I either just forgot entirely or never knew that there were monster stat blocks jammed in the back of this book like an overstuffed washing machine. Seriously guys, if you overfill it, it's not gonna clean your stuff. There are 3 other books like this one, and 2 of them have no stat blocks for new monsters anywhere to be found, but one of them, Races of the Wild, does this too. So that's fun. Why am I even telling you all this? Honestly, I just thought it was kind of funny how the elemental creature who threw my understanding of what that even means into the dumpster was in such a weird and unassuming place. Speaking of, the Earth Whisper is a genuinely bizarre entity. They look like an earth elemental, but if instead of being made of rock and stone, it was made of ghost. As ethereal beings, they exist in both the ethereal plane and whichever other plane they happen to be on at the time, which means they can move through walls and pretty damn fast too, much like a spectral undead might. The only difference being that they can end their turn in a solid object made of rock or dirt without taking damage, whereas most ethereal creatures who would do so would end up taking some force damage. According to their lore, they do indeed originate on the elemental plane of Earth, however they often find comfort living in the material plane as well, deep within the mountains and within the dirt below. They're honestly pretty chill guys, opting to just spend the vast majority of their time surrounded by unworked rock and earth, not really moving around or doing too much at all. However, if they are disturbed, they can be excessively violent and highly vengeance motivated towards those who disturbed them. They've got a pretty strong dislike for most humanoid creatures, seeing them as greedy little hogs who want nothing more than to plunder the earth for its treasure. And they especially hate miners. If they see you wearing one of those little hard hats with a light on it or wielding a pickaxe, they're likely to just attack you on sight and go for blood. Now that said, if you prove to be a genuine ally to the elemental and its cause of protecting its mountain from those who would dig tunnels through it like a rot grub through flesh, they are liable to be a formidable ally. Many mountainous towns who simply live on the side of mountains have a good relationship with nearby Earth Whispers, paying homage to them and in turn enjoying the protection such a creature can provide. But whether friend or foe, the Earth Whisper has some nasty and highly unconventional abilities at its disposal. It can of course make a melee attack, which deals cold damage and temporarily decreases the target's dexterity score. Why does that happen? Well, because it's trying to turn them into stone, of course. If the target's dex reaches 0 from this attack, the target becomes petrified and is transformed into a stone statue bound to occupy the lair of the Earth Whisper and maybe serve as a warning to those who would dare tread in its domain. The Whisper can also attack the 2 least common saving throws in the game. By using its Insight Avarice ability, it can attempt to charm a creature within 30 feet, forcing them to make a charisma save, and if that creature is charmed, they must use their turn to attack the nearest creature who is carrying the most amount of material wealth on their person. If the target is uncertain, the Whisper just decides for them, which is an outcome you certainly don't want. They can also use Earthen Fear, which is one of the most wild abilities I've seen in a monster in a hot minute, to force a creature to make an intelligence save. On a failure, the creature is frightened and has to use their entire turn not to run away from the Earth Whisper, but to run as far as they can in whatever direction they believe will take them deep below the surface as possible. If they encounter a sheer cliff, a steep incline, or some kind of other obstacle, they straight up have to attempt to climb down. And if they encounter a fork in the road and don't know which way to go, they simply choose randomly. Oh, and if they get to a dead end, an open area, or otherwise have no idea which way they could go to get deeper beneath the earth, they simply drop to the ground and start digging with their hands. This is horror movie type stuff, gang. They can also cast Earthen Grasp, Wall of Stone, and Move Earth, which is extremely fun. And once per day, they can summon a standard Earth Elemental. So if all the mind games and spirit stuff just isn't cutting it, smashing a dude into the ground with a bigger dude made of rocks is always an option. But as the opening of this video implied, the most important thing about the Earth Whispers are by far the implications of their mere existence. This creature is not an undead, but it is still an elemental, so it's not a ghost. It's just a weird type of earth elemental. It's still theoretically a being given life by the same energies that cause more typical types of elemental creatures to be born, which means that it will still work for any and all plot hooks revolving around elemental monsters. Got a wizard summoning elementals to use as minions? Give it a few of these bad boys to command. Maybe it's an evil cult of elemental earth that's doing this summoning. An incorporeal creature would do wonders for them, I'm sure. Maybe the party can even help the elemental free itself from the command of the cultist, or maybe the Whisper isn't even being compelled to do anything and it chooses to join up with the cult because it likes the cut of their jib. They also hate miners. These creatures also work perfectly for a random encounter in a mountain, nearby a mountain, or anywhere underground for that matter, even inside of a dungeon. If encountered in an unnatural area like a dungeon or a mine, the Whisper is probably pissed at the location's creators and might assist the players in destroying them if that's something they agree to do. It could also just decide that the party is a threat and go after them to drive them mad or turn them into stone, you know, whatever. I also love the idea of the players finding a bunch of petrified creatures and saying, okay, here we go, this is probably gonna be a Medusa encounter, only to have a confrontation with the Earth Whisper instead. You could set this up in a really cool way by having an old abandoned mine that is just filled with petrified miners. Some of them are fleeing to escape, others appear to be running deeper into the mine. There are even a few of them who appear to be digging downwards with their bare hands, all turned to stone. You could also always have the elemental approach the party for help if they seem trustworthy. Perhaps it is the guardian of a small mountain town in need of assistance, and if the party assists it in whatever the problem may be, they'll be rewarded. I also just really like the idea of an Earth Whisper protecting a small village. Maybe the village is in the mouth of a cave and you can see precious gems glittering all around the cave's walls, but for some reason the locals have no interest in extracting any of them. At first the party might think this is kind of odd, at least until they come to learn who truly owns those gemstones. This creature does truly have a ton of use cases though, so please let me know in the comments how you use this creature or if you've ever played in a game with one of these in the past. I'm so glad I looked in the last 4 pages of a 20-year-old D&D book about player race options. As always, if you do want to use this monster, there's a stat block for 5th edition linked in the description down below, which is free, 100% for you to use in your game. And if you feel like throwing me a few extra bucks to help support this show and see more content like this, well, I guess it doesn't cost anything, but feel free to subscribe, that's free, and that helps a lot. But outside of that, I do have a Patreon where for $3 a month, you can get the cool high-res Dungeon Dad PDF stat block, which is all the same information as the free one, but it looks a little neat, looks a little fancy, looks a little special, and helps me keep on doing this. Speaking of, it's time for Patron of the Week. Thank you so much to Horror Crawler for the scary amount of support you give me every month. It means the most. And thank you for watching. As always, if there's a monster from a previous edition of D&D or any other RPG or some book you like, I don't know, let me know in the comments down below, and you might see it show up in a future episode of Monster of the Week. This has been the second entry in my attempt to catch up on all the types of monsters that I have been neglecting over the past 2 years in some cases. So it's been fun to make another video about an elemental. Next week, we got a new type of undead coming your way, which I am very excited about. It's terrible in a good way. So I'll see you over there. Also, I believe today, I am going to be on the Gen Con main stage at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard, doing an incredible live play with some extremely talented folks. So if you're at Gen Con and you don't have your tickets and you gotta know where to be in like a couple hours after this video goes out, for one, why are you watching this video at Gen Con? For two, it's probably sold out. I don't know. At time of recording, it's not, but I'm also recording this like 2 weeks in the past. Anyways, I'll leave a link to that. Feel free to check it out, and hopefully I'll see you there. And if you are at home and you want to watch that live stream, I'll link to it down below as well, because the whole thing is going to be streamed on the Gen Con pages. I think they're streaming it on Twitch and YouTube, but I'll link to all that stuff down there as well. So you can still check it out, even if you didn't get a chance to come out to the con this year. In any case, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Till then.
Who's that? Monster of the Week.